morning, everyone. It's definitely my pleasure to be here to join you at the summit. I wish that I'm in Port Harcourt to physically be there. It's always more fun when you can engage with the audience physically, but unfortunately for many, many reasons, I'm unable to get to Port Harcourt, and we thought we'd use technology to close the gap. And to be part of this great array of speakers, you know, it's a privilege and an honor, and I thank the organizers very much on this very important day for our country in terms of what it represents. My task here this morning is to talk about harnessing the economic potential of our country. I think that's a topic that has been discussed over and over and over again, diced in many different directions in terms of what is possible when we talk about the economic potential of a nation like Nigeria. Are we going to be talking about the resources that we're naturally blessed with? From those who are the resources that are going obsolete in terms of their importance and their relevance to global economy and therefore its impact that will have on our own economy, to those that we have not even fully explored in any tangible way, that we're getting the real value for our country. And in many ways, we're allowing others to take advantage of some of those resources, you know, without us getting the benefit that we deserve. You know, there are just too many things for us to consider. Are we going to talk about our people? Because the biggest asset we have, even before all of the natural resources that we're blessed with, are the people that are called Nigerians. Whatever shape, size, or color they are, whatever tribe or what side of the country they come from, we all bring different value to the table. We have different gifts that represent an opportunity for a nation. We represent different gifts that represents a portion of what is required. When we bring all our gifts to the table, all our human capital, knowledge, asset, intuition, strength to the table, we create a great opportunity for our country. When we think about the entrepreneurial nature of our Southeastern brothers, when we think about the technical adventure of our Southeastern brothers in terms of innovation and creation and using their skills learned from war and thereafter, from education and all, to create new things and to solve problems, when we turn that into a national asset by investing in it with a common goal, a common mindset, then we draw from the human capital from that segment. When we draw from the knowledge base of the Southwestern people and their administrative skills and opportunity that they represent, then we bring value to the whole nation. When we draw from the strategic, dedicated skills of the Northern people, then we draw from that talent. When we draw from the productive capacity and embracing and hospitable nature of the middle part of the country, then we draw value. No matter what part of the country the human capital comes from. Apart from our common knowledge base, there are characters and traits that are inherent in our different people that represent opportunity for us and talents that we can harness, both for national productivity and for export of human capital, which some nations depend on largely, which we have the capacity to, because Nigerians are doing excellently well across the whole world. They have been worthy ambassadors of the nation in expressing their talents, their skills, and their gifts. And you would find that most of them are people that were originally educated in Nigeria, went out of Nigeria with that fire and that passion to do amazing things that we seem to have in abundance as Nigerians. Now, a nation that wants to deal with its human capital as an asset, as a resource for economic development, must invest aggressively and be more strategic about the kind of education that it delivers to its people, which means we need to invest in our educational system. We mustn't leave one child behind out of school, because you never know which one child that you have not given the opportunity of education is actually your biggest asset. I don't know how many Steve Jobs America has produced, But if you really count the big tech giants that have brought recognition and economic development to America, they're not that many. There are many people in the pipeline that they have created. But then you're counting the Steve Jobs, the Bill Gates, you're talking about all of these key guys that have done amazing things, but they're not that many. That's what makes each child important, and investing in the education of each child becomes extremely vital. I'll give you an example. I've had the privilege of working and building a missionary agency for the last 26 years. 26 years ago, I set up Christian Missionary Fund, an organization that acts like a bank and a resource center for missionaries working across Nigeria. And one of the fields where we have worked for over 2 decades is in the Koma Hills in Adamawa State. And they're across a number of states together. And one of the projects we did on one of those fields, that's a field where when we started working there, the people in the community were largely naked. Women were still cutting leaves to cover their private parts. Their breasts were open and left open. Their practices left much to be desired. Part of the work we did with our missionaries at a point was to bring out a number of children from those communities and bring them into the Southwest, place them with families in the Southwest, made sure that they went to school, had an education, and were exposed to a different kind of life. To our amazement, when we took stock a few years ago, we found out that all of those children who have then gone to university have graduated in sciences, biological sciences, medical sciences, and related sections. And they have done excellently well. I have never stopped to be amazed and to think of the fact that those children were children that possibly would not have been exposed to the kind of education that they had because we changed the environment into a place where they could have that education. We would never have known the talents and the abilities that they had, especially in an area that many children find challenging. If we take every single Nigerian child and we create an equitable opportunity for them to be educated, we can open many tracks from the technical skills track that is important to our industrialization, that will help us in innovation, that will help us in creating solutions for many situations. If we invest in it and we're not just paying lip service in some ways to our educational program without any strategic agenda tied to a national development for the long term, then we can readily develop our manpower in a way that we can have those we need as a nation, and we can have those other ones that can serve the rest of the world, but always be able to bring value back into Nigeria. As at today, if you ask the Central Bank of Nigeria to give you data, you will find that the second largest source of foreign exchange for us as a nation is the repatriated funds by Nigerians in the diaspora. What does that tell you? That we can have a deliberate strategy of exporting manpower. But before you can export your manpower strategically and deliberately, you must put in a structure, you must put in a system, you must educate for need. You must educate as is required in the international market, in areas where there are gaps and people are seeking for manpower to import from other countries. Dubai or UAE is an importer of labor. Maybe 90% of those who work in Dubai are not from the UAE as citizens. They are from the rest of the world. And there are multiple markets where they have shortage of human capital. We have excess of human capacity, but we must train them for the opportunities that we want to seek for them. We must have a holistic plan that ties our different activities together in order for us to harness the economic potential of our country. When we're building infrastructure plans and all of that, We need to think about how we tie the human capital to the infrastructure development. We need to think of the next 10 years, the next 20 years. Where are the areas that we want to grow as a country? What kind of human capital will we require for that? How do we ensure that the training that we're building right now and the areas of focus within our universities or our colleges or our technical schools is focused in those areas? And how do we tie those manpower development to economic plan? So when we're planning the roads and everything, what do we build into the contract in terms of the number of young Nigerians that are technically trained, either through technical school or through universities and all of that, that will be tied to the infrastructure plan, investment and spending that we will have over the next number of years, so that we do not have situations where we empower foreign companies that have the capacity to deliver what we want, but we do not require them to effectively take on board huge numbers of Nigerians for the execution of the project, so that there's knowledge development, but also a lot of the economic value is retained back within the country, and that money travels through our economic layers. When you pay someone a salary, they'll pay their landlord rent, they will buy food in the market, they'll pay for their children's education, they'll pay their tailor, they will pay, the wife will pay the hairdresser, or the wife herself, who is part of that economic chain, is paying her hairdresser, she's paying her doctor, she's paying for her business. There are multiple routes that money travels within an economy. But if it's not planned and it's not meant to reflate the economy in any way that it does, we lose the value that that money travel should create. We lose it because we have not strategically thought about how we want to do things and where we want to go with the plans that we have. As a nation, we have massive arable land that we cannot, you drive on any highway in Nigeria, you're still looking at huge expanse of land that has just got wild vegetation on it, which means it's massive arable land that we have not even cultivated at all. We have the right climate to do many things, from the southwest to the southeast to the middle belt of Nigeria, to areas where there are things you think can only come from Europe that, if you go into Plateau State, around Jos area and all of that, there are multiple things that you can do. We're blessed with a land and a nation that gives us the opportunity to do multiple things within the same country, because the nature of our land from one end to the other is different, and each difference represents a different opportunity. But how do we economically mine it for purpose? That brings the importance of security, because when the country is safe and people can move from one end to the other, then we can have skills and talent travel across the land, utilizing the opportunities that our land presents. There's a lot that we can do. Geography, in terms of the diversity of our climate, of our nation, of the population. The skills are different from one area to the other. The talents are different from one area to the other. The things we can do, they're different. But all of it must be brought together in order to allow us to harness the economic potential of our people. One of the biggest things that for me about Nigeria is important is our natural, abundant passion for entrepreneurship. Our ability to create businesses out of nothing. Our ability to turn opportunities around like this. Our doggedness. Our ability for long suffering in trying to create something out of a difficult situation. Nigerians are resilient people. We are resilient in nature. And that helps us in terms of being able to suffer through the process of building businesses. For us as a nation that has huge unemployment situation, we need many people who are building businesses, because with every business that is built, there's a job created. And every job that is created brings one more person, 2 more people, 10 more people into the economic landscape. And that makes a lot of difference in what we can do. So creating the infrastructure for enterprise development, whether the financial infrastructure or the physical infrastructure or the clusters and the hubs that would help the expression of entrepreneurship within our country, that would be key to us harnessing our economic potential. Recognizing the new generation industries, the entertainment industry, what fuels it, what kind of education is required, what kind of skills is required, what kind of financing structure is required to help the small, the medium, and the large. So it's not just a few big ones within it, but understanding the entire value chain of the entertainment industry and feeding it with the right economic model to de-risk it in a way that is easier for financial institutions to be able to invest in it and therefore help to grow an industry that without much help has created many jobs for many Nigerians, and it's playing itself out as a great economic contributor to the nation. Realizing that the skills of the past that were the celebrated skills are not necessarily the skills of the future. And being open-minded enough to tap into that our human capital that we're talking about. That our human capital that is diverse and that is multi-layered. That our human capital that has the ability. All the young men in the music industry that are making names and making waves across the world are bringing glory to the country and creating economic value in the country. But they don't necessarily have a university education. Because do you need one to be successful in it? If you have it, it's good because it puts you in a position where you are able to stand, to engage, to encounter and to plan, and maybe you would handle the business affairs of your music business differently. But however, the key thing is, when do we begin to deliberately create an infrastructure that supports the enhancement and the development of that industry in the way that we can have more human capital engaged in it in a constructive manner, not accidentally, but deliberately, and therefore harness the potential. It represents many things for us. We can use the industry to build the image of the country. We can be deliberate about the information and the image of Nigeria that we present to the world through our music and our film industry. And messaging is key. The love for America and the pop culture of America was sold to us through movies and music. And if we're the 3rd largest industry in the world, as Nollywood, then we need to be more deliberate and engaging and investing in bringing it more mainstream, but not just the big 1, 2, 3, 4 names in the industry, but finding how to invest across the entire value chain of it and create the value that it can harness for us, but also help us to create jobs for multiple layers of Nigerians, from young to old, who have the ability to create value within that industry. We need to think differently. The hardware industries that we've always looked at have their role to play. And we must look at where the value is within the hardware industries as a nation for us to take value from. But we must also think of the emerging industries, the future industries, and the investment and the skills that will be necessary to drive it. We don't want to wait until other nations, smaller nations, are beginning to make 3 times, 4 times our national revenue. But because they made the right investment in those industries, before we wake up and try to copy, we need to think about how we lead in certain segments that either we have not paid much attention to. Developing our human capital, because that human capital takes us into different sectors, different segments, and they represent assets, both in local currency and in foreign exchange for us as a nation. We must think in terms of industries, both traditional and emerging. We must think of how we think proactively ahead of time, how we strategically link the industries in terms of how the decisions that we make, how we look at the industries with how to derive value across the value chains of those industries, and how our strategic investments of today will lead to the value that we take from those industries tomorrow. How we tie our educational program into developing the right human capital for all of the areas that we look forward to being able to harness. How we make the choices that allows us to lead and not to follow. How we think ahead of the curve, and we encourage, we inspire, we set up the necessary infrastructure for a future that is literally upon us. And how we encourage the unusual players who are not your typical celebrated players, but who probably create more value than some of the big people that we celebrate and have the potential to. And how we strategically look at industries that have the potential to create the highest number of jobs if we apply ourselves to it and apply ourselves to it strategically, constructively, in a sustainable manner, and playing for the long term rather than the short term. We haven't been a long-term planner for a long time as a nation, but the future that we're going into requires more long-term, strategic, proactive action for any nation to rule in terms of being able to maximize its economic potential. We have too many things given to us as a gift, but a gift is useless except you work it, and you work it effectively to achieve the goals that you have set for ourselves. Clarity of purpose, clarity of goals, clarity of actions, and proactive action will lead us in a state where we're able to effectively harness the economic potential of our people for the benefit of our nation. Thank you very much. Have a great summit.